Good morning, everyone. The Delaware County Commissioner meeting for March 8th, 2021 is now in session. Would you stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, good morning, everyone. I'm Gary Merrill, President of the Board this year, and to my left is Vice President Commissioner Lewis, and to her left is Commissioner Benton, and Mike From, our County Administrator. And to my right is the person that makes it all work, Jennifer Walker. How you doing?
Good, how are you? Resolution number 21-165, in the matter of approving the electronic record of proceedings from regular meeting held March 4th, 2021.
So move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 21-165. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-166, in the matter of approving purchase orders, unannounced certificates, and payments of warrants in batch number CM APR 0305.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 21-166. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-167, in the matter of approving travel expense requests.
So move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 21-167. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-168, in the matter of approving grant awards for the Delaware County Trail Assistance Program.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
Good morning, Commissioners. Zach Daly, Economic Development. These were 3 grants that the committee, the Trails Committee, had recommended for approval in 2020. We're finally have all the agreements signed by all of the communities, and we're ready to proceed and looking for your approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any
So
questions?
you did get Orange Township.
Orange Township did send in the necessary documentation before March 1st, but the language is still in there even though we're past March 1st.
Okay.
So we should be all good to go.
Okay. Good. Good to see this moving forward. These are nice grants, and there's a lot of money coming from the state for trails and transportation, at least proposed in the transportation budget. So with this and with the state funding, we should get a lot of trails work done this year.
I agree, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? Vote.
Vote on motion 21-168. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Thank you.
Resolution number 21-169, in the matter of authorizing the use of procurement cards for the Delaware County Soil and Water Conservation District.
So move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brett Bacon, Delaware Soil and Water. We're asking for a procurement card from Matt Lanham. Matt is our field operations supervisor for the drainage maintenance program, and we feel that the efficiency of the program will be improved greatly by him having direct authority to go and purchase things like grass seed and fertilizer and materials and such not. So, would ask for your
Questions or
approval.
comments? We're going to see a lot of you guys the next few weeks.
Yes,
and
you
months.
are. Looking forward to it. We've missed you.
You look forward to it?
Yeah, absolutely. We've missed you guys.
Other questions or comments? Vote.
Vote on motion 21-169. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Resolution number 21-170, in the matter of approving the Child Placement Service contract and First Amendment between Delaware County Board of Commissioners, the Delaware County Department of Job and Family Services, and Child Placement Provider Christian Children's Home.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bob Anderson with Job and Family Services. Excuse me. We have 2 contracts for placement ranging in price for family foster care of $81.50 per diem up to $248 between the 2 different providers. These are, we actually have a child placed at one, 2 at the other, just the best fit for the children we're receiving into our care.
Have we've used this provider
Yes.
before?
Yes.
Okay.
And we are getting into the situation that we're trying to move quickly on these because we're having such a hard time finding appropriate placements or an appropriate placement that will take our children, just because across the state it's just getting harder and harder to place. So we've actually had a couple that have been emergency placements that they've been there a few days prior to the contract actually being set in place.
Is it COVID related?
Right now, really, we don't feel that our numbers are up in COVID. Children are staying in care a little bit longer because of COVID. Actually, in the spring and the early summer, we were getting less referrals, but they're more severe referrals that we're bringing into care. And honestly, my belief is some of the providers are kind of cherry picking, and they're taking the children that they can serve a little easier than others. So as other counties, some of the counties out there are seeing an increase, and it's just filling up these residential facilities.
Questions or comments, any items? Vote?
For the record, Northeast Ohio Adoption Services was the second provider there. It's listed on the agenda.
Yeah, I know she left that off. I was going to comment about that, so thank you for correcting that.
Vote on motion 21-170. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-171, in the matter of approving the second amendment to the contract between the Delaware County Board of Commissioners, the Delaware County Department of Job and Family Services, and SpeakRight LLC for verbal transcription services.
So move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
And this is our contract for transcription services for our children's service staff, just to complete their dictation and other documents as needed.
So this is an extension.
Yes.
Been pleased with the service?
Yes.
that SpeakRight's been providing?
Yes, we are pleased with their service. Some of our employees use it a little more than others, but we like that opportunity for the people who like to put that in there. That helps them kind of keep up with their timelines and deadlines and things like that.
Vote?
Vote on motion 21-171. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-172, in the matter of approving fund transfer for Job and Family Services.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Discussion.
And this is just our quarterly transfer for operational costs, bringing the $120,000 from the Workforce Investment Act Fund into our Public Assistance Fund to reimburse for expenses over the last quarter.
Questions or comments? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-172. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number
you.
21-173, in the matter of accepting the award of the Ohio Department of Public Safety grant for the Emergency Medical Services Department.
So move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
The other way, yeah. Take it.
Morning, Commissioners. Jeff Fishel, Director of EMS, Delaware County EMS. Every year we apply for a grant with the Ohio Department of Public Safety to reimburse us or to be able to purchase equipment or training materials. Lieutenant Shelley Gannon helps us with that every year. So this year, same like last year, we applied and were awarded the grant, a little over $3,000, which we'll use either towards training equipment or medical supplies.
Questions or comments? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-174. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-174, sorry, 173, 174. In the matter of approving transfer of appropriations for emergency medical services.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
The original lease for Station 7 in Genoa Township called for $60,000 for the year. Since we are not going to be renewing that lease, we have the $60,000 that was freed up. We're going to utilize that money for some upgrades on the station and to purchase equipment for the station.
For the new station.
For the new station, yes. So since Station 7 isn't just a station for us, it's also our logistics center and a training center for us, we went ahead and got an offer from the sellers of the building for their forklift and for a conference table and chairs for our training facilities down there. So I'm requesting to be able to transfer over just under $10,000 to cover the cost of the forklift and the conference table and chairs.
Just for clarification, these are things you would have needed anyway, so you're just basically moving the money for that purpose.
Right.
So it's not finding a way to spend it. I just want to make that clear for the record.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-174. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-175, in the matter of adopting an update to Delaware County Board of Commissioners military leave policy.
So move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
Good morning, I'm Ellen Wandel, the Human Resources Manager. The updates to this policy include following the federal fiscal year as opposed to the calendar year for calculating military leave, and an additional military leave allotment for public safety personnel.
Questions or comments? Vote.
Vote on motion 21-175. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Thanks,
Resolution,
Ellen.
Thank you.
resolution number 21-176, in the matter of transferring real property at the Delaware County Fairgrounds to the Delaware County Agricultural Society.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
Good morning, Eric Hostetler, Staff Attorney. As you're aware, we've discussed for several years the problems that have occasionally arisen from there being dual ownership at the fairgrounds. Certain parcels are owned by the county, certain parcels are owned by the Ag Society, and that confusion has caused some problems over the years. What has been proposed is to transfer those parcels that are in the name of the county to the Agricultural Society. The deed that is shown in the journal lays out all of the conditions, the statutory conditions that go along with that transfer, most important of which that property can only be used for the fair, and any other use, if the fair were to cease to operate, that land would come back to the county. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions or comments?
Maybe just a couple comments. As you mentioned, Eric, this has been a topic for a number of years, and there's been good debate on whether we should and how to go forward and so on. And I appreciate all your work, all the Fair Board and their attorneys' work to get this done. It does provide, I think, the appropriate level of protections for the county. They can't mortgage the property, they can't sell it, they can't lease it, they can't transfer it. I mean, so without our approval, which we wouldn't approve if it was not for the intended use. So again, and in this litigious world we live in, just by virtue of being the owners of those parcels, the owner of those parcels, we expose ourselves to a lot of liability, lawsuits, threatened lawsuits, et cetera, for unintended or for issues that arise and quite honestly have arisen in the past on these parcels for various use. So again, I think this reduces it basically eliminates the liability of the county, protects us so that the property is used as it could be in perpetuity, as it should be in perpetuity. So again, I think this makes sense to move forward this way. So thank you for working on that.
Sure, and on a couple of those points, the Fair Board is responsible by statute for the management of that property already, but we have had no formal agreement kind of governing how that would operate. So this would eliminate the need to have that management agreement that our insurer has recommended over the years. Now the property insurance would still be through the county. That's also by statute, and that's reimbursed from certain proceeds at the fairgrounds. But you're correct that the general liability coverage would no longer be in play because we were not an owner.
I'd like to thank you, especially Eric, because you've been working on this for a long time, and it's something that really has needed to be done for all the reasons that Commissioner Benton stated. So I'm really very happy that we're moving ahead on this. Thank you. Thanks to the Fair Board and
I noticed we
to
have
all.
Sandy
There,
from the
Sandy
Fair Board
is
as
here.
well. I don't know if you, Ben as well. I don't know if you had any comments or thoughts in addition to what Eric has mentioned.
Yeah, so Benjamin Winter, President Ag Society. And just quickly, thanks Eric, thanks to our attorney DJ who's been supporting on the other end, and we are looking forward to moving forward and committed to the use of this property, and this just makes a lot of sense.
Oh, that's
So
great.
thank you.
Thank you.
No questions for me.
Okay, I do have a comment. No, you can sit in. I am opposed to this, and this is my statement. I strongly object to the transfer of property that belongs to all taxpayers in Delaware County, but has been given, donated to the Delaware County Agricultural Society. My support of the Ag Society is unquestioned. My personal support, my commissioner's support includes examples of when the water issues we had up at the fairgrounds a number of years ago, the bed tax. I've very supportive of that and continue to be. And of course, many years I have purchased livestock during the fair. And this is in no way changes that support going forward. We are the caretakers of all taxpayers in the county, and philosophically, I believe we fail in our fiscal responsibility by approving this transfer. I believe the concerns have been and can be managed in other ways. With that, I call for the vote.
Vote on motion 21-176. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
No.
Resolution number 21-177, in the matter of approving temporary access easement, a temporary easement, and a release by and between the boards of county commissioners of Champaign County, Delaware County, Madison County, and Union County, Ohio, and Columbia Gas Transmission LLC related to natural gas utility work on the Central Ohio Youth Center site in Marysville, Ohio.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion?
This measure will authorize the approval of a temporary access easement, and a release for Columbia Gas. This is for work to be done at the COYC site, site of Marysville. That property is owned in conjunction amongst the 4 member counties, and it requires an individual vote of approval by all 4 counties.
Questions or comments? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-177. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-178, in the matter of appointing a member to the Delaware County Board of Developmental Disabilities.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion?
Good morning, Commissioners. Jane Hawes, Director of Communications. We have before you a resolution to appoint Dennis Mowry to the Delaware County Board of Developmental Disabilities. I think he distinguished himself with his knowledge of finance and of financial planning as well. So we recommend your approval.
Questions or comments?
Yeah, maybe just a brief comment. As Jane mentioned, Mr. Mowry does have a long background in financial and tax matters and financial planning. So, and he's a retired resident and interested in participating and helping with this agency in particular. So we welcome him to it, and he'll be a valued contributor from a financial standpoint, especially, which is something that every board needs. So I think this is a great appointment.
And Mr. Mowry, too, has a great record of community service. He's on the Source Point Board, and he really does have a great financial background, which will be of help to the DD board. So very, very happy to vote for him.
Part of our responsibility as commissioners is putting a board together that represents different talents so that the board can act in the best interest of the taxpayers in our county. And an area they had a need in was a financial area. And based on the interviews, I think all 3 commissioners are very excited about the prospects of him being able to fill that void. And I was impressed with the interview, and he is retired, and so he has time to serve, and he's willing to serve, and I commend him for that, and I'm excited about supporting him. So, any other comments? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-178. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution number 21-179, in the matter of approving right-of-way work permit summary sheet.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion?
Good morning, Commissioners. Rob Riley, Chief Deputy Engineer. These are standard utility installation permits within the right-of-way, and we're recommending your approval.
Questions or comments? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-179. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Ms. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-180, in the matter of approving a supplemental appropriation for the 2021 hsip Worthington Road improvements.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion?
You may recall last week you approved a new organizational key to account for the federal revenues and eligible expenses for this project, which includes upgrades at the intersection of Worthington and Lewis Center Road. This would basically appropriate the necessary funds to that account to pay for the engineering expenses on this project. I'll remind you, this is 100% funded by ODOT's hsip program, and so we're very glad that that's been done.
What does hsip stand for again?
Stands for Highway Safety Improvement Program. It's a federal program that ODOT administers.
Questions or comments? Any additional? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-180, Mrs. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Merrill.
Aye.
Mr. Benton.
Aye.
Resolution number 21-181, in the matter of declaring county personal property obsolete, unfit, or not needed for public use.
So move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
We have 4 pickup trucks we'd like to dispose of. These are 2005 to 2007 model year pickups. All of them have pretty high mileage. I think at least a couple of them have some mechanical problems, and so we'd like to go ahead and dispose of these.
Questions or comments? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-181, Mr. Merrill.
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Benton.
Aye.
Resolution number 21-182, in the matter of approving owners' agreements for Liberty Grand District Section 3 and Liberty Grand District Section 4.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
This is our typical development agreement for the street and stormwater improvements. This involves Liberty Grand, which is being developed by MI Homes and includes 99 new single-family lots within that subdivision.
Questions or comments? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-182, Mr. Benton.
Aye.
Mr. Merrill.
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis.
Aye.
We'll see you in just a few moments after Mr. Cromer gets his report. All right.
All right.
I believe we have another piece of
We
business.
do have another piece of business we can take care of now. Resolution number 21-183. Resolution to select an alternate to serve in place of the president of the board on the Delaware General Hess District Advisory Council.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. I have a comment just for clarification. Typically, the president of the board serves on this advisory board, and they do meet this Thursday. Unfortunately, I will be out of town and not certain of my internet service, and it is a virtual meeting. So I've asked, and Commissioner Lewis has agreed to be the voting member Thursday night, and the resolution is simply to make that official. Any other comments? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-183, Mrs. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Merrill.
Aye.
Mr. Benton.
Aye.
That brings us to administrator reports.
I have nothing to report today.
Commissioner Benton?
Just a couple things. I mentioned briefly earlier that the transportation budget is moving through
You need to move closer to your microphone, please.
the what? I'm sorry.
You need to move closer to your microphone. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay. How'd you know that?
Somebody sent me a text.
Ah, okay, good. Somebody's listening. That's a good thing.
Somebody's listening.
Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to mention that we had our MORPC Executive Committee meeting Thursday, and they discussed the transportation budget. And in it, there is going to be significant money for trails, as I mentioned earlier, and transportation projects in general. And that's always extremely important to Delaware County. We'll see how this goes forward, but we need to get better support from ODOT and the state in terms of some of the big projects we have here. It really helped the region, not just Delaware County. We also talked about this federal legislation now that's moving through Congress. They're going to reinstate earmarks. I think, generally I oppose earmarks, but if they do that, we need to make sure that Delaware County participates. So anyway, going to see how that goes forward. Had a session Friday on broadband with MORPC actually again. There is significant legislation and funding coming to expand broadband and make it more universal. So that's good. Even here in Delaware County, we have some gaps, and so this would be good, be helpful. Got a CCAO land bank overview on Wednesday. Interested in seeing what's going on with land banks across the state, and then DKMM board meeting tomorrow. That's it.
Commissioner Lewis?
And we had a Justice and Public Safety County Commissioners meeting, state meeting on last Friday. Met virtually and discussed indigent defense and what we should do there to achieve 100% funding on that, and also jail construction. It was an interesting session. We had the Metro Committee also join us, and we had the sponsor of legislation that is trying to do something to give to counties for their jail construction, something similar to the School Facilities Commission, which was formed to give money to schools after legislation that was passed several years ago. So right now, though, there has been $50 million allotted in the budget for jail construction, so we'll see what happens. But quite an interesting discussion on just how you do this, the process, and apportioning the money fairly, and so learned a lot from that. And today I am, rather than going to Washington, D.C., I'm on a virtual call for our National Committee on Justice and Public Safety, looking at some FEMA issues in particular. So I'll report back on that next week.
Is Delaware County potentially eligible for some of that jail funding? I heard about that as well and didn't know if we could participate in that too. Do you know?
Yes, it's right now it looks as though it's going to be a lot of the smaller counties that are really hurting more than Delaware County is. Some of the jails are not even county jails. There's a jail in one county that serves several counties, and they're in pretty bad shape. And so the sponsor was saying, though, the good thing about that is that the costs, taking care of several of those counties would not require the costs that it would to redo a larger urban jail. So at least several counties could be taken care of off the top, and still money remaining, but still very much a work in progress as far as how the money will be apportioned. Good question, though.
And I have nothing to add. I understand we have executive session.
Well, before we do executive session, Chris Boserman has his
I can't hear you.
Chris Boserman has his presentation today.
Okay, I apologize. Bossman. My apologies.
It's all right. Rob's gonna get our, is there a power
Plug up
presentation?
here, Jen, underneath.
Oh, you have electricity too?
Yeah. I think it might be all right. I've got the, yeah. This thing. I don't know if that's the right plug. Might have to use yours, Jen, I'm sorry.
Multimedia presentation. Yeah. I've heard it. Yeah. And our thinking was we need to get one or two or three projects designated as, shouldn't be hard to do. I think we know what our most.
Rob and I were, as soon as we heard that, started off.
Yeah, so I was gonna chat with him, see where we could go with that. Earmarks. Supposedly they're putting a limit on it. It's gotta be 1% of, up to 1% of discretionary spending. And no more than 10 per district. They don't know what 1% of discretionary spending is, and they don't know how that works out on 435 districts.
This one? Try
Oh, there it goes. When the light comes on. Maybe try another. There you go. Drag that over to this. Or the, go in there. Open that up.
Not both of them?
Just the one. Top one.
Top one?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, can you see that? Is that on your
Okay.
screen?
Well, I don't see anything yet, but I
There we
assume
go.
it's,
Okay.
I can now, lower right-hand corner. Yep.
Okay. Almost had it. All right. That's good. Just hit any key.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your patience while we got started. I want to make sure you understand it's not Jen's fault. She offered her laptop to me before the meeting started, and we said, no, we'll bring our own. And so our plan failed, not hers.
For the record, introduce yourself.
I'm Chris Boserman, County Engineer, and thank you for your attention for the next few minutes. Every year about this time, we try to update you on what's ahead on our road projects for the coming year, and about what's ahead in years beyond to the year at hand. So that's what the presentation today is about. I'm going to handle part of that. Rob's going to talk about part of it in terms of funding, and I'll leave some time for if you have any questions. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to interject those at any time, or we can wait till the end, however you choose. All right. I was wanting to scroll. We'll just deal with that. So I wanted to just touch base with you and let you know how we're handling the challenges of the pandemic. Our office has been closed to walk-in customers for a month or two now. We had a break where we were back open, went back to a closed situation. We have drop boxes at the door. So it's not just my office, but our building. So both the environmental services and the building regulations have been dealing with scheduling visits to the office, and so we've handled that, and most of the public has been very accommodating in terms of that process. And we will open everything back up to basically walk-ins again on the 15th of this month, and still have drop boxes for those people who don't feel comfortable coming in. And we've moved in almost entirely to electronic submittals in terms of plan submittals to our office. And so there are a lot of bad things that have happened with the pandemic, but one of the things is it's prompted us and our customers to get much more proficient in electronic business. And so I expect that to be one of the positive holdovers of all this moving forward.
That's the Track It?
Yeah, so that Track It program is part of that. Not all the submittals come to our office through Track It, but on the development side of things, people submitting development plans, most of them now aren't bringing a big roll of plans into our office and to Tiffany Magg's office or the building regulations office, and instead those are being made electronically, and we're able to see not just where those plan approvals are in our workflow, but in the other departments as well. And so it's been a positive thing, and the fact that we were in the process of implementing it when the pandemic happened is very fortuitous, and we were able to take advantage of the benefits of that.
I know it's a big part of economic development's plan too, to automate that
Yes.
sort of process. And I think a number of townships have already started using it as well.
Some have.
And cities and villages, I think,
Yes.
are looking at it if they haven't started yet. So that's good to see. Makes
Yes, it is.
easier for our customers.
Yeah, and kudos to Bob Lamb and his team for they were the ones that kind of identified the need for it and pushed for it and helped fund the initial startup cost of that. So very appreciative of that. Just a quick review of what our office looks like. There's obviously one county engineer. We have 3 senior management folks, and we have 16 staff engineers and surveyors, surveying professionals, and there are 18 people that are about the business of their technicians, either in the design or construction side of things, and construction inspectors that monitor to make sure that things are being built according to the approved plans and specifications. We have 4 people who are managers over different sections of our highway department, and we have 5 full-time and 1 part-time clerical assistant, and we have 25 full-time and 1 part-time employee in our operations department that are both mechanics and equipment operators and highway workers, and do the business of maintaining the infrastructure that a lot of our other folks are about designing and building. So that's just a snapshot of what our staff and department looks like. 2020, as you know, was a very busy and productive year on the road construction side of things. We had a $38 million program. I won't go through all this list of projects for you, but you can scan through that, and you're familiar with those because you had a hand, obviously, in improving engineering contracts, right-of-way contracts, and construction contracts for all of those projects. So development continues to be a very time-consuming focus of our operation, reviewing the plans and the agreements and the developer obligations related to developing property within Delaware County. Our office is involved in the roadway items, the storm sewer items, the erosion incentive control, water quality items, and and when we talk about roadway, it's not just the infrastructure that they're building to facilitate their development, but also what the impact of that development is on the rest of our highway infrastructure in the county. Development, obviously, activity drives our population. Our population drives the number of vehicles that are on our road and the demands that are placed on our road network. You've seen these numbers in terms of our population. I guess we won't be seeing the census numbers until September now. Is that what, is it?
I've heard a couple months, but I've also heard fears that it might be September.
Yeah, I know it's been delayed from the from the time it's supposed to be
I
certified.
think they've
to
allowed
assess.
politics to get in the way of it.
I think you're exactly right, yeah. I don't think there's any question about that. But at any rate, I think the census is going to show we have somewhere around 215,000 people in our county, and the trend line from this graph, based on the number of submittals that continue to come into our office, I don't expect that, at least in the next year or two, to slow down. This other graph is a good indication of that when we look at building permits, and these are the building permits that do not include building permits within the municipalities. So this excludes the city, the cities and villages. And so you can see that we're back up to above the 2007 range of building permits, and obviously the 2010 low point was a function of the recession and the carryover from that. So, in talking to the building industry folks, they continue to point out the lack of housing, that we're not building enough housing for the demand in our region. That includes Delaware County. It's not just a Delaware County issue, a regional issue. But I think those are indicative of building permits continuing to increase. We'll talk a little bit about our budget, talk about where our money comes from and where it's going to. On the revenue side, the revenue sources that fund every county engineer's office in the state receives revenue from two major revenue sources, that being the gasoline tax, the motor vehicle registration fees, and those are funds that are protected constitutionally, collected as road user funds, can only be spent on roadway functions. And so most counties that are not experiencing the kind of growth that we are run an operations department that maintains the existing level of infrastructure, and those two sources, the blue and the orange wedges on this exhibit, would be just the sources of funding for those agencies. The large green portion is a share of the county sales tax that is dedicated toward road and bridge funding, and that makes up about 63% of our annual budget. And you'll see in my next slide that money, all of that money plus some, goes to capital projects. It's not doesn't support just the ongoing operations. So we have several other smaller sources of revenue. We collect permitted inspection fees from development activities. So if somebody's doing a project and we have to put an inspector on the job, they pay for the inspection fees for that. They pay the plan review fees for the fees associated with our review of their developments. On the expense side, the largest portion again would be road construction and resurfacing projects, over $18 million in 2021 will be spent on that activity. And when you combine that with the engineering and design services and the right-of-way acquisition to support those projects, so there's another $7 million from those two sources combined. We're at $25 to $26 million of our budget earmarked for capital expenditures. And most of those are directed toward mitigating congestion and traffic impacts on our roads. Years ago, our biggest need in terms of transportation was in the condition of our roads. We were concerned that our roads were falling apart, our bridges were in poor condition. We've been able to commit really significant revenues in the past 10 to 15 years to address that concern. And now almost all of our focus on roadway projects from my office seems to be related to congestion points on our system and trying to improve the quality of life by both safety and congestion. So it has been a shift in focus, but it's it's definitely needed, and it's borne out by the graph that I showed you with the increasing population, that we can expect congestion to continue to be one of the major issues for our public.
The grants in aid, $1,150,000, is that the money that, or largely the money that goes to the townships to support their
Yes, it
projects?
is, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So we make, we have a program that matches the local share grant of townships and cities and villages for transportation applications that will match their local share. A lot of those programs, your application is more competitive the more local funds you can bring to a project. So as a way for us to help bring more money back to Delaware County, we try to increase the local share in order to make those projects more competitive.
For clarification, that 1.1, is that the state grant dollars, or does that include what we match them with, or
That is just our
our contribution?
Our contribution, yes. Rob represents our office and our county on the Attributable Funds Committee at MORPC, which makes decisions about the direction of federal funds that flow through the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. He's going to talk to you about that program and a couple other programs that we utilize to leverage these funds that I just spoke of toward larger transportation projects.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I'll start by saying this is a somewhat complex slide, and you'll be tested on this at the end of the presentation, so memorize it quickly. The thing to glean from this is really the fact that it's a pretty complex web of agencies and flows of money that originally start at the gas pump. The federal portion of the federal gas tax is 18.4 cents per gallon on gasoline and 24.4 cents on diesel fuel. Basically, all of that revenue goes to Washington, is deposited in the Highway Trust Fund, and that combined with more recently general federal revenues, so income taxes and so forth, have supplemented that in the last 10 years, largely because the costs of operating the highway system have exceeded that available revenue, and so Congress has basically appropriated general funds to help supplement the Highway Trust Fund. From the Highway Trust Fund, that money basically then flows back to the states through a number of different agencies and mechanisms. And I'll start by talking about the portion that goes to MORPC. So if you kind of follow the top half, that money goes to the Federal Highway Administration and then is distributed to all the 50 state DOTs based on population. And then from the state DOTs, some of that is allocated by formula, by population formula to metropolitan planning organizations such as MORPC. And so I'll talk about what MORPC does. There we go. So as Chris said, these are called MORPC attributable federal funds. If you can say that better than me, congratulations. It used to be just called the MORPC federal funds, but now it's AFC. So basically the funds that go to MORPC come out of three pots, if you will, for federal highway. So some of that is, the largest part is the STBG, which are essentially funds that can be used on any type of transportation project. The transportation alternatives, which is primarily bikeways, enhancements to facilities, landscaping, upgrades to the appearance of roads, and then congestion mitigation and air quality, or CMAQ, involves basically any project that relieves bottlenecks, can pay for traffic signals, so things that don't necessarily add through lanes on highways, but open up bottlenecks and reduce congestion and improve air quality. And so that money then flows out from MORPC to, first it pays for a number of different services that MORPC provides. On the right, they have a number of different programs that they offer to Central Ohio residents. And then finally, the AFC program at the bottom, which essentially offers that money out to the local agencies within the MORPC planning area. So again, these are formula funds. I already kind of talked through what they can be used for. I'll talk, so recently in our county, we have had some success in getting some of those MORPC funds. The South Old State Road project was a very large portion of that. We got in fiscal years 2019 through 21. Africa Road recently that we paved the shoulders and resurfaced last year. And then we have an upcoming project on Red Bank Road to do the same thing, to pave and widening the shoulders on that project. City of Delaware has had some success with getting funds toward the Appoint project, as well as their signal system, which we're actually participating in. If you recall, within the last few weeks, I've brought some contracts involving cooperation with the city on their signal control system. We're actually participating in that as well. And then Powell recently resurfaced Sawmill Parkway last summer from Seldom Seen to Home Road through this program. Any questions so far? Okay, keep going. So this is a table, one of two, showing what the current MORPC commitments are for fiscal year 2021 and on. In Delaware County, we only have 3 projects currently committed that aren't complete yet. So basically, the Red Bank Road project is a fiscal 23 project, I believe, and then the City of Delaware's Point project, as well as the Powell project that's already done. So you can see again, these are the rest of the commitments, and the total funds committed are $134 million. Currently, we only have about 12.5% of that coming back to Delaware County. So in the current and near future, we are not seeing as much of that money as we've seen probably in the last 5 years. So, and I'll talk about that more in this next slide.
Rob, just
Sure,
a quick
sure.
question on that, on the Go Ohio ride sharing. Could you just explain that one, please?
Well, I wish I could give you a better explanation other than it's one of MORPC's programs that they operate as a service, and frankly, I don't have a lot of information
Okay.
on that.
Okay.
All of those in the white are programs that MORPC offers.
Okay.
So,
We'll check on that.
So the MORPC process or funding process is basically a 2-year cycle, and it's basically involves about a year's worth of work every time. Starting with the current cycle, started last summer. We submitted applications to MORPC. Those applications were scored and reviewed through the fall and through the winter, and then just last week or 2 weeks ago, I'm losing track of time, but the draft list of project commitments was published for public comment, which I'll get to in just a second, and then later in the spring, the final project commitments will be made after the public comment period closes, and so that process will repeat again in 2 years. So the applications that were submitted from Delaware County, all agencies in Delaware County are listed here. The Delaware County TID submitted an application for about $7.3 million for the Orange Road Railroad grade separation. We also submitted the Home Road Extension Phase 4 overpass, and then Orange Township, City of Delaware, and Delaware County Transit also submitted applications. And so the good news is it does appear that we are going to get a funding commitment for the Orange Road grade separation. That is on the list of projects that Morpsey currently has advertised for public comments. That's the good news. The bad news is we only got one project, and so you can see that that's only about 10% of the total pot of money that Morpsey has to distribute. And so I will say what I find a little bit unfortunate is that really this large pot of money is only going to 5 agencies, and that involves City of Columbus, Franklin County, really 4, if Franklin County and Franklin County TID, both being involved with the engineer's office, and then CODA. And I'll speak just a moment about the CODA applications. There was, as Chris said, I'm involved with the Federal Funding Committee. I actually chaired that committee for 2 years. I was vice chair before that for 2 years, and so I've got a pretty good idea how that committee operates. And what happened this cycle, basically CODA changed their strategy a bit and applied for what they're calling a corridor initiative project, basically identifying high capacity corridors to provide high frequency, high capacity busing on 3 different corridors. I believe they've identified 2 of the 3 corridors. They're still studying a 3rd corridor, and basically they applied for significantly more money than this, but this is basically what it got whittled down to fund acquisition of right-of-way for that corridor, as well as the development and engineering and planning for that project.
Rob,
Mike,
just
sure.
real quick, in looking at this, it seems like there's a lot of money going to the Morpsey and CODA programs. My perception of this program, back before I even joined the county, was that it was a roadway transportation project, but it seems like there's when you look at that slide, there's 18% of the funds that are going to mobility center construction and corridor initiatives, and not the traditional roadways construction.
I agree with your observation, Mike. I think frankly, I spoke against this funding this project. I was one of only a few that really spoke out against it. The thing to understand is the funds that come to Morpsey are federal highway funds. It's, the division between transit funds and federal highway funds happens in Washington. So basically that highway trust fund gets split up into a couple different big pots. The funds we're talking about are highway funds. What then happens is, again, that surface transportation block grant program can be used for any type of project, any type of transportation project, including transit. And so, unfortunately for us, what has happened is a larger and larger share of that STBG funding is going to fund non-roadway projects. And there's a lot of different opinions about transit. I don't want to speak against transit because it has a very important purpose, but I think there's a lot of valid comments that are concerned about the usefulness for all the population for transit. Certainly we don't have, oh boy.
Oh, whoops.
There we go. I think we're good. Certainly here in Delaware County, we have very little access to CODA, or residents have very little access. CODA runs a few routes in the Polaris area.
When they say corridor, my interpretation of corridor would be all the way up 23 north of Delaware City, but I don't think that's the interpretation.
That is not one
And
of the, yes.
we end up, I'll use the phrase, short change on most of these projects, but the way they distribute the money. It's my view, but again, a corridor, my definition is a lot different than how they define it, apparently.
So yes, the corridors that have been defined, I believe what CODA is looking at is either East Main Street or East Broad Street as a high-capacity corridor. There is a Northwest Columbus corridor, which I'm not sure exactly what roads that uses. And so none of those are US 23, but you're absolutely right. That would be a potential corridor. I raise this because I think it's an issue. Clearly, as Morpsey members, we have an interest in expressing our opinions to the extent we have an opinion on this. Commissioner Benton, I believe you're on the executive committee, is that right? So I think it's important that your board understand this issue, the magnitude at which these funds are really going to support CODA. Now, I will say CODA had made a case to fund this project. They are pursuing other federal federal transit funding, and their rationale was that those grants are more successful, or those applications are more successful if there's a regional commitment of funds, and so that was the premise for such a large ask.
Regional commitment funds is other federal dollars in another pot, so it seems
That's
kind
right.
of disingenuous.
That's exactly right.
Well, this goes back to the switching to OPWC. I always felt like roadway projects should be ranked higher than water and sewer projects because there was a revenue generating component to water and sewer. The same with CODA. I mean, there's a fair revenue, they're able to, unless we start tolling all of our roads, that just is another component that seems a little, and like you said, it is, just in looking at our Delaware County Transit, they get a nice amount of money from the FTA, so I can imagine if what we're getting here for our ridership, what CODA is getting for theirs, so.
Rob, if I could just make sure I understand this. Delaware County is getting 10% of the funding, and Franklin County and Columbus, including CODA, which is, again, primarily Franklin County, is getting 90%.
That's correct.
And what about the other counties, Licking, Fairfield?
So the
Union.
MPO area that is eligible for Morpsey funding only includes Franklin and Delaware
Okay.
County, and a couple of townships in Licking County that abut Franklin County, and then I believe Jerome Township in Union County.
Okay.
So that is technically the MPO, although Morpsey's membership extends beyond those boundaries. So yes, and I will tell you, last funding cycle 2 years ago, Columbus got all of the funding commitments. We were not successful in getting any funding 2 years ago, nor was anyone else really, because all the money went to Columbus. And this isn't beat on Columbus or beat on CODA Day for me, but I think it's very important that you understand. Am I doing that?
I think it's just.
It's pausing probably, it's
Oh.
timing out.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll try to keep that on there. So again, I think it's important that you understand, because these are our tax dollars as well. I mean, we send money from the pump to Washington and it's reasonable for us to expect some of that to come back to Delaware County. I think we're all very grateful for the money we've received from Morpsey in the past. It's not not trying to say we're not grateful, but something to keep an eye on, certainly, as you as members of Morpsey. I will give you any information I can to assist you if you're interested. So, and then I'll talk about there's a few other programs. Actually, just one you acted on earlier, the Highway Safety Improvement Program. Those funds actually come from ODOT directly. That is not sub-allocated. Those funds get allocated directly from ODOT. Again, the hsip. We also are involved in the Highway Bridge Partnership. That's an ODOT program, federal emergency, and then the Major New, which is the TRAC program you've heard of. And then ODOT then allocates a smaller portion to the County Engineers Association to distribute to its membership. That involves 3 different programs: CSTP, CSIP, and then LBR. Those are relatively smaller amounts of money compared to what I've talked about earlier. And then they also have programs for the cities and villages, urban paving, municipal bridge, and small cities. So just to let you know, there's a bunch of different programs that ODOT administers as well. And then talk just briefly about some of the state funding programs we've made use of, OPWC being the primary one. Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're involved with District 17. Chris is on that integrating committee, and we're with 5 or 6 other counties, Morrow, Knox, Fairfield, Licking, and Pickaway, I believe, and share about $9 million between those 6 counties. And those are basically sourced from the SCIP and the LTIP funds that come from the state. So we really like that program. Every agency likes those programs because it's a relatively strings-free pot of money. It doesn't come with a lot of red tape. It's relatively easy to get, or relatively easy to use. Unfortunately, it's very hard to get because it's so competitive. So, and then finally, the ODOT Jobs and Commerce Division distributes about $4.5 million per year to the TIDs within the state. We've been successful the last 2 rounds in getting a commitment from ODOT through that program. So, any questions on all that? Any of that? Okay, so I'll tee this up for Chris. We, as you know, we have a 5-year plan you've seen before. We've done some recent updates on the 5-year plan. I'll let Chris talk about what that looks like.
Before I move into that, Rob, how far out is MORPC program? So if we applied for the funding commitment today, would be available in 28? 27, okay. So it gives you an idea of not only how competitive, but how long it takes to work through the process on projects with federal funding. So let's talk a little bit about what we have ahead of us at the engineer's office and for the county in terms of transportation projects. As I mentioned earlier, our operations department, the section of our office that maintains our existing roads and bridges, is funded by our fuel tax revenues and our motor vehicle registrations, and also those that are, I mentioned, developers paying fees and review fees and inspection fees for the services that they're demanding. Our operating budget in 2021 is about $11.2 million. That covers the operation of the salaries and benefits for all the employees, the basic operational components of the office, and the snow and ice control, roadside mowing, all the things that go into maintaining and keeping our infrastructure in a good condition, not improving it, but just maintaining it in the condition it's in. It is probably coming, hopefully knocking on wood, and coming out of winter. We don't have major storm events still ahead of us, but March is notorious for that. The most intense storm event we had last month, I may have shared this with you, with the one that went over kind of a 3-day period. Our total cost just for those 3 days of that service was $350,000. So when you take into account the salt, the fuel, and the labor to do that, really an expensive component. And when you're done with that, you have nothing to show for it other than a bare road without snow and ice on it. And we could build a really nice bridge that lasts us 50 to 75 years for $350,000. So just a point of reference that when people were demanding that the roads be pristine in the middle of winter, that comes at a cost. It comes at a very high cost. Some of the capital improvement projects that we have planned over the next 5 years, we've got the remainder of the East Powell Road project, which is under construction now, the Worthington Africa intersection that's under construction. The next phase of the Home Road extension that Rob mentioned, our MORPC application for, that doesn't look like it'll be successful. A grade separation on Cheshire Road, on Orange Road, the project that it looks like we will get MORPC funding for. Africa Road improvements between the improvements that are going on now at the Worthington intersection up to Big Walnut Road, and of course our Big Walnut interchange project, and the South Old State improvement for the segment north of Orange Road up to Lewis Center Road. So those are some of the larger the projects that are on our screen in the next 5 years that are over $5 million in construction. We look at what that means budget-wise. We've had, if you look at the year we've had this past year in 2020 and 2019, we had some large projects. A lot of our projects in the coming years are shifting to smaller improvements at intersections, adding a turn lane, making drainage improvements, those kind of things that still need to be done. But if you look at the orange band on this exhibit would show those projects in aggregate that are above $5 million. So trying to make sure you understand we won't have, for a few years, we won't have as many big projects after 2021, leading up to some really big projects that are out there when we look at Big Walnut Interchange and some of those railroad grade separation projects that we may or may not receive future federal help on. The cash flow implications of that are real. This exhibit shows our revenues in blue, our expenses in the gold band, and we are relying on carryovers and a balance that we have in the road and bridge fund. And so as we work through this program, we draw that balance down to where in 2025 we have just over $1 million. Now that's not a good place to be or where we want to be, but the good news in that, the small consolation in that is, I think last year or the year before when I showed you this analysis, we showed in the fifth year out us being at a negative. And so the addition of the fuel tax and the addition of the $5 permissive license fee increase that you were instrumental in getting has helped bolster our funds to where we don't see going into a deficit position in 2025, but we will be lower than where we would want to be from a carryover standpoint at that
The
time.
Big Walnut project is in these numbers,
It is in
2025?
It is in 2026, and so
Okay.
yeah.
Why would revenues go down between 21 and 22, Chris, from 35 to 31 million?
We're looking at total revenues, so those are grants, so we wouldn't see revenues from some of those grant sources that we might otherwise. So correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but the 25 bars would indicate the the Orange Road, the revenue from that source. So that's why that would pop back up. As we look beyond 2025, also 2025 also assumed that we would be letting, the Orange Road is 26 or 27. The 12 million, that bump is because we're proposing that the Slate Ridge revenue bonds would be issued at that time to help fund.
Bridge.
Yes, yes. So, not that we're prepared to get into the details with you today, but I wanted to preview with you that we move into 2026 with those large projects, those grade separation projects, the potentially Big Walnut Interchange. There may be a role for us in the 3671 interchange. And so we're going to have to be thinking in those out years about financing some of those projects. State has a state infrastructure bank loan program, or we can talk about how we want to do that in terms of financing from the county in general. But we'll need to be involved in a financing discussion in a few years about how we fund those bigger projects that are on the horizon. So that's the message. I also wanted to just share with you, make sure you understand the relationship that our office has and that you have through our office with our local government partners, particularly the townships, cities, townships, and villages in the county. We provide the grant assistance program that we mentioned earlier in our expenditure slide. You support our TID with funding $400,000 per year at the current rate. And if a township comes to us and wants to do a project, we pay for 100% of the engineering costs and manage the construction project for them. Statutorily, as the county engineer, I'm the engineer for the townships, and so if they have projects they want to move forward with, we don't fund the project itself, but we fund the engineering, and we handle the construction and manage the construction of those projects. We have a salt purchasing program that we routinely enter into a contract with the state to acquire salt, and we make that available to our townships. We store it and provide that to them on a sale basis, and it's good that we can do that. For there to be 18 different salt storage facilities scattered around our county doesn't make any sense, and this is a good way for us to support our local government partners. I mentioned how expensive snow and ice control was. This year we paid more for a ton of salt than a ton of asphalt. So that's being smart about how and when we purchase salt makes a difference in our cost, and so having storage facilities to be able to do that is a good thing. We have a culvert replacement program with our townships, so culverts above 48 inches, we'll pay the cost of the culvert replacement. They're typically not set up to do that kind of work at the township level, and so we assist them on those projects. The last bullet point is just to point out that I'm proud of the condition that our roads are in. I'm not boastfully, but we should take stock in the fact that we're not in the place that a lot of other communities are, a lot of other counties are, in terms of trying to just patch their roads and hold them together with the revenues that they have. And so the condition of our road system is very serviceable, and we invest in keeping it in good condition. But there is a trend that our township partners here in the county are struggling to do that. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. We're in close contact with the townships, and they're very aware that our systems, generally speaking, around the county is in a better condition than theirs. And so I just wanted to share with you that there's some pressure, or I wouldn't call it a pressure, acknowledgement from the townships that they're still struggling to try to keep their system maintained. So,
Is there an expectation the state will put more money into township roads or not?
I know in the transportation budget there was a discussion of redoing the formula for the distribution of the gas tax, and it came from someone who was supporting the township position on that. But the result of that was that the cities and the counties, I think the state, would be giving up gas tax revenue to redistribute to the townships. It wasn't that more revenue was going to be added.
Well, so you're just taking money out of one pocket and putting in the other.
Yes, so there is that discussion going on at the state, but it's not in a way that's going to, where it's going to impact all of us positively. Before I wrap up, I want to say how much I appreciate how your board has supported our office and has supported the roadway network in the county. I've not had to spend much time, any time, convincing you that roads are important, and I think you hear the same thing that I hear of how much demand there is on our road system, how important it is to the quality of life of our people. And I continue to believe that the things that impact our residents the most of our residents are our law enforcement, our schools and our public transportation system. And so thank you for you not just being supportive in a general way, but being supportive in a meaningful way of funding projects that I think are making a difference in our community. So
I would add sewers to that list.
sewers, yeah. I probably should say infrastructure beyond.
It's infrastructure.
Maybe,
But I do think if you were to ask people, they're assuming that the sewer's
Yeah,
there. They don't
exactly.
spend a lot of time thinking
Exactly.
about
No, they don't
that. But
worry about
as they wait in an intersection on.
They think about roads.
Yeah, they're thinking about those on a daily basis, so.
EMS too.
EMS.
Yes.
Yeah, they expect that to be.
I mean,
there.
I agree.
they're all,
So I'm not trying to say I'm more important. I hope you don't feel
Okay.
like that's
Oh,
what
no.
I hope you don't feel like that. I'm just,
No,
I think, I thank you for your acknowledgement of how important the roadway system is to the quality of life in our county.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. One quick comment. We're very fortunate to have Representative Troy Balderson on the Transportation
Yes.
Committee. I bet he's on your speed dial. I mean, that's,
He's right here.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He's very accessible, and in fact, I spoke to his staff last week
Oh,
about
great.
transportation issues. And,
Good.
So,
Good.
and Jeff brought up the fact that earmarks are coming back, and I totally agree. Whether I philosophically think earmarks are good or not, if they're going to be there, we owe it to our residents to make sure that our federal tax dollars aren't being directed somewhere else.
yeah. Yeah, I was, just a couple comments. The economic development aspect of the roads is extremely important, and all infrastructure, but roads especially, and especially with the Berlin Business Park moving forward, 3771 becomes even more important for economic development in the county going forward. But I'm interested in your thoughts on what you're reading about the state and federal transportation budgets at this point. You mentioned earmarks. We've talked about that now. I'm just curious what you're hearing about state and federal transportation budgets.
I'm not hearing a clear message about what it's going to look like. The biggest news I heard was about earmarks. When there's a discussion about where's the revenue going to come from, it gets really quiet, and it doesn't sound like there's an appetite on the federal level to address the gas tax issue. Rob's slide showed how the federal funds flow. It was general fund revenues and the gas tax that flows into the highway trust fund. And it's either going to be more money. If there's going to be more money in transportation, it's going to come out of the general revenues, which is we're already in a deficit situation there.
More borrowing.
Yes, and so all the discussion is talking about needs and not a lot of meaningful discussion about where the money's going to come from. That's my take on it.
Have you heard any details on the state transportation budget at all at this point? I haven't seen any.
Yeah, I followed it pretty closely. There's really not a lot in there that makes a big difference for us. Representative Carfagna was working to try to get the amount of money that's available to TIDs increased, and it sounds like there's going to be a small amount of an increase, maybe $500,000 or $750,000 of what's a $4.5 million pot. So we're not for the whole state. So we're not talking about a significant amount of money. But I think it's important. Still, we need to thank Rick for trying to make something meaningful happen there. And the fact that they're starting to address it hopefully means 2 years from now, when the next transportation budget comes up, that the conversation can continue instead of starting from scratch. So there was in the House, so it's been approved by the House. It's in the Senate. The House version had a reduction in the motor vehicle registration fee for electric and hybrid vehicles. When the gas tax went in, it increased the gas tax from, or the fee for hybrid and electric vehicles to $150 hybrid, $200 electric, and the House approved version reduced the electric one to $150 and hybrid to $100 without much discussion or justification. But there, at this point, there really aren't enough electric and hybrid vehicles registered in our county for that to make a significant impact on our revenues. But when you hear that GM say that in 9 or 10 years their entire fleet's going to be an all-electric fleet of vehicles, that's not going to work. So, so that whole issue of how we capture a user, those people using the road, paying for the maintenance of the road, is going to have to be restructured. And the state transportation budget's going the wrong direction on that.
Chris, one of the things that you kind of led into it, we're finishing up our financial model for the Bixby campus right now. It's taken us a little bit longer on that financial model because of COVID and trying to, readjust our projections and recovery. So I do think one of the things we originally had on our radar this year was to, as we look at longer term capital, to get with you guys and understand those projects. So your comments here, I think, are very timely, and you could expect us, maybe later on this year, springtime or summertime, to be wanting to start looking at that longer range plan.
Yep.
Thank you.
Some of those future projects will be financed with TIF dollars, which bonding them, so it's probably not, it's the combination of everything together that,
Yeah.
as far as the electric vehicles, that's all political right now. The people who use the roads ought to be paying regardless of what they're driving, and it's unfortunate that's not the spirit of things right now.
It's not a very popular idea, but the general consensus is that at some point we'll be moving to a vehicle miles traveled sort of payment for your registration of your vehicle.
Which means
So-
then the government knows how many miles you drive. That, to me, that's a terrible model, but probably what I say won't matter, but that is a terrible model, that the government will be able to tell when you leave home, when you get somewhere, and that's 30 miles or whatever. That's not the model we should be building around.
I totally understand what you're saying. If you're carrying a cell phone, the government already knows if they want to.
But that still doesn't make it right.
I agree. You may or may not know that when you see a sign on the freeway that says 15 minutes to downtown Columbus on 71, that information's coming from the cell phones of the people that are traveling in the corridor. They're monitoring how quickly your phone's moving,
Really?
and that data's consumed as we speak, and so there are agencies already harnessing that information for all sorts of uses that
So the argument, we're already doing it, so it doesn't matter. I'm not arguing with
I'm
you.
not.
I'm not arguing, but
I'm just-
that's the argument they use.
No, I'm not standing before you as an advocate of any of that. I'm just saying that I think that's where it's headed. If there are a number of alternative fuels on the road, right now we really have a vehicle miles taxed. The more gas you consume, the more miles you drive,
Right.
the more tax you pay at the pump. It's just the collection method and the way it's calculated would be different, but the philosophy is still the same.
Boy, thank you so much.
welcome.
though,
Thanks for your
my
attention.
Gosh.
Thank you.
Good
We're fortunate to have such a great county engineer department in our county doing great things, and I think
Yes.
it's generally appreciated by the
Yeah,
residents of our county.
yes, absolutely.
Thank you very
Got
much.
a great team.
Thank you. Well, with that, I believe we have need for
We
executive.
do. Resolution number 21-184, in the matter of adjourning into executive session for consideration of employment, discipline, compensation of a public employee or public official, and for security arrangements and emergency response protocols.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Benton, seconded by Commissioner Lewis. Discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 21-184. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.